On me. I'm Raveesh Bhalla. I'm a freelance designer back in India. Previously to this, I was the first employee at Haptic, which is a startup which created one of the first personal assistants on chats like about 3 years ago. I'm also a Google expert for design and have a background in engineering and Android development as well. So like I said, this is something I've been researching for the last few months independently on the side. Before we get started, it's kind of important to define what the next billion means. Do any of you have any of you ever heard the term the next billion? Yeah. It's actually been pretty common for the last few years, right? It essentially represents the demographic that's just coming online for the first time right now. So it's not talking essentially about technology itself, but people who are coming online itself for the first times in their lives. To be a little more specific, this relates mostly to the people who are coming online from Latin America, from the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. And quite honestly, it's not a marketing term, which a lot of us might think it is, because it kind of comes across like that. Cisco has data pointing to a significant increase in users of the internet for the past few years. So their data pointing to about 2.8 billion in 2014, and they're expecting 3.9 billion by 2019. Like I mentioned, so the growth is pretty strong in these regions, in particular the developing world. India is where you see the strongest growth right now. These are figures provided by the Internet and Mobile Association of India, and they are essentially saying that the growth is over 25% year over year. And it's probably going to increase even faster right now because there are a few new players coming into the telecom market over there who are really bringing down the price. Quite similar to the way that the price was brought down in the early 2000s by Reliance back then. So, like I mentioned, it's not really a marketing term as much as something that's genuinely happening. And the reason so many companies like Google, Facebook, why they're significantly targeting this market is it's probably one of the quickest rates of adoption of any technology that we've ever really seen. Like, it's explosive. And because of this growth, it provides a big opportunity to a lot of businesses to essentially target this market and grow from there. But the key thing is, like, what will these people be using the internet for? This is based on data from the Boston Consulting Group, who did a research back in India on the rural internet usage. The key market that they're seeing, the key products that they're seeing people use is, as you might imagine, social networking and messaging in particular. Audio video consumption is also very high. They may not use the internet as much for it. They typically download it and share the content offline, but that's where they get it from. And the reason for that is ultimately that it's a key source of entertainment for these people in their lives. News is a very important one, largely because it helps these people get connected to the rest of the world. Facebook loves to talk about how when people get connected to the world, they're essentially moving out of poverty because they're more aware of the world around them and they can learn new things. E-commerce is a little slower than you might expect, but that's kind of essentially because a lot of people need to get over the trust factor of using credit cards and other systems online for payments. Places like India, for example, have a lot of e-commerce being done on cash on delivery. Where the e-commerce usage tends to increase is when you take into account something like online ticketing. So that's going to be like your flight bookings, your train bookings, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of these systems back in India, for example, are actually being moved completely online and removing people in between to remove ticket outs. So what are the traits of these people? So to understand how to build for them, how to design for them, you need to understand a few key things. One is they're primarily coming online using wireless internet, not broadband. That means very slow internet speeds, very patchy itself. They come from a very wide range of backgrounds, both in terms of religions, languages, ethnicities, everything. For example, India itself, as they quite famously say, they have like about 30 languages across the entire country, at least 5 major languages being used by a significant portion of the population. But in my eye, the standout trait for all of these people is the fact that they've completely skipped the PC age. That is, they've never really used a computer in their lives. So this is really important because the things that we take for granted as designers, as people anywhere else in the world, they have not really used any of these things. But there's a very unfortunate fact when it comes to building for these people. And the fact is nobody really wants to design for this audience. So what do I mean by this? It's when I usually say this in a lot of audiences back in India, they kind of get taken aback. I'll admit to this myself. I'm a designer and I've never really wanted to design for this audience. The reason for that is when we do our work, we kind of post it on Dribble, we post it on Product Hunt and all of these places. We want to get the appreciation of our peers. We want to be famous for some of the work that we're doing online itself. What this means is we are not really focused on this demographic itself. If you take the West, the people over here are not as connected to these people and they don't understand the daily lives ultimately. So what ends up happening is people in these regions aren't really focused on them because they want to be westernized, they want to get the appreciation of the work over here, but they don't really end up catering to this audience itself. As an example, from a personal example, a couple of years ago, my boss used to tell me, like during a lot of our meetings, that whenever we're having an argument about design decisions, he would say, I'm not going to take your point of view because you are the most un-Indian user that I've ever seen. And I'd actually wear it like a badge of pride. I'm like, that's awesome. I don't want to be like them. But the fact is, as a designer, you need to have empathy for these people. It's only when you understand them that can you truly build for them. So like I mentioned earlier, the key trait for these people is the fact that they've skipped the PC age. And it's going to make a big difference. It actually makes a big difference when we see them actually use these products. So I've just got 3 icons over here. There's a pretty popular saying that we have when we make fun of millennials in general, which is that they don't understand the floppy icon, right? They're like, what is it? Why is it an icon for save? They've never really used this. This demographic that I'm talking about has never really used a mouse in their lives. Their only way of input to any kind of device that they've had is probably the T9 keyboard on their feature phones. They've never really used a file system, for example. This is something that we've taken for granted again. The only time any of them have ever used a file system is if they're transferring music from one person to another using the SD card. And trust me, that's a very power user feature over there. Most of them just buy SD cards with music preloaded, or they go to a shop and give them the SD card and say, please just give me this music, and they pay for it over there. But what do they use? The opportunity truly lies when you're building products for these people, when you kind of tap into things that they're already using, trying to take patterns from there. And what they're using is primarily messaging more than anything else over there. You also have calls, and trust me, they use calls in a very different way again. One of the very common things, for example, they do in India tends to be they will give a missed call to another person just to let them know that I've arrived or something. So it's almost like yo, but over missed calls. A company that Twitter acquired called ZipDial actually built their entire business around this thing for missed calls. So if you wanted to download an app or something, you'd say, just give a missed call to this particular number. When you do that, you'd get back a message with a link to download the thing. So you don't have to actually spend any money on it. You also have like these people also using a lot of AV content, mostly audio on their phones right now because it's feature phones. So that's going to be your radios over there, FM radios built into their phones. A few of them do watch movies as well, but they're going to be on really tiny screens. They do watch videos a lot, obviously, when it comes to the TV, when it comes to watching movies. And photography. Quite a few of them obviously love to take photos, even if the cameras aren't that good, they just keep doing that. When you tap into these experiences that they're already having, that's when you're able to build products for these people that really work well for them. And a classic example of that is ultimately WeChat, right? WeChat started out in China as purely a P2P chat, ultimately. But they started seeing certain user behaviors and the fact that people were repeatedly coming back into the app as a means to create like a gateway to the internet for them. So they started working with brands to create their presence on WeChat itself, taking it a step further and providing more detailed screens inside there. Essentially, they are HTML5 web pages inside of WeChat itself. That's why it's had such explosive growth, because ultimately that's what people are comfortable with. Like I mentioned, I worked at Haptic, which was a personal chat app, right? Like personal assistant that you could chat with. I saw that over there as well. So that's the audience that I was ultimately building for. These people, particularly the people who were not from the major cities in India, the people who are from the smaller cities, the people who have not really used, don't really have laptops and all at home, they would much rather chat with a human being to do whatever they needed to do on the web. So as a personal assistant, we used to buy them train tickets, we used to buy them flight tickets, we used to buy them stuff from Flipkart, or from Flipkart's essentially like the Amazon over there. They would much rather talk to a human being, firstly, because of trust. They didn't trust the internet as much to go there and find stuff for themselves. They were worried that what they'd end up buying is something that they would get duped by. But the chat element particularly helped, because they just felt like it's an extension of WhatsApp for them. The first version of our app itself that was designed was literally a rip-off of WhatsApp, to be honest. We try to maintain as much similarity to that because people were just coming there. Then we started taking some of the things that they were doing within our app and started building on top of it to make those experiences easier. But chat remained the core component. And even if you go today to the application, even though we've added a ton of more complex features like a form within chat itself, the primary interface remains chat. If you come onto the home screen, it actually still remains an inbox itself. So coming to the study itself, what I'm doing is I'm trying to study different patterns that are fairly common in mobile design itself. These patterns are gestures, search, various kind of buttons that you have inside your application, and tabs and horizontal paging, essentially. The way I'm studying this is I've created a bunch of prototypes, each of them slightly different from one another, and then I'd go to this audience and essentially see them use it personally myself. It's not going to be like doing it through products, but you need to actually sit down with them and try to make them do common tasks. So the task that I have them do right now is essentially unlock a cell phone and make a call. These are things that literally every one of them wants to do. It takes quite a bit of time because it's essentially going to be about 10 to 15 minutes of watching them do these things on the device, using different prototypes, seeing what's working. When things don't work, I usually give them a different prototype to try it on and see what works and what doesn't. Just a disclaimer right now, the study is very much still ongoing. I've done a bunch. The folks at Uber were quite kind enough to let me come and test it out with some of the drivers that they have coming in to collect their money, or they're just joining for the first time and they're coming in for training. So I'll just go through each pattern one by one to show you what I learned from them itself. The first, like I mentioned, is gestures. And gestures is one of those where we kind of take it for granted, where we quite often talk about that this is a very core smartphone experience. A lot of the stuff that we've talked about for the last few years has been that gestures is the next key to building a great experience. The problem with gestures, however, is that it's never really very intuitive quite often, even for your regular device users. And that's because gestures quite often don't provide the affordances that we need to understand things, unlike something like a button or something like. What is an affordance? An affordance is something about a product that essentially helps us understand how this product is going to behave, right? As an example, if I was to throw a green colored ball at you, you'd probably be relaxed. You think it's a tennis ball, you'd be like, it's not going to hurt me that much, I'm just going to catch it quite easily or just bat it off. If I was to throw slightly harder, maybe a white colored ball instead, you'd probably think it's a baseball and you might be like a little more worried about it because it's going to hit you harder than a tennis ball would. So that's your brain essentially reacting to the affordances of what's being thrown at you itself. The same thing works with mobile applications as well, with any design essentially, because you're trying to build this into your existing affordances that you're kind of used to. That's what material design is ultimately all about, when it's drop shadows and its movement and all of that kind of stuff. So like I said, what I was using to test out gestures in particular was the unlock screen that we have on Android. This is the standard one that I've recreated using Framer. This is one of those where it's kind of beautiful the way they've gone about it, but if you actually look at it from a completely different perspective, there's barely any affordance over there. There's just a very tiny lock at the bottom, and it's barely noticeable quite often what you need to do. When I would kind of open the device and give it to them and ask them to unlock the screen for me, they would be completely confused in terms of what they need to do because there's nothing there to guide them towards it. Instead, what would quite often work a little better would be something like the iPhone's design, which is essentially slide to unlock. So those people who could read English, for example, in my prototypes was only using English, they kind of understood what they need to do because it's just kind of explicit over there. What worked with the audience more than anything else was the old gingerbread design of the lock screen, which was a lot more explicit in its design. It has two handles, and the moment you hold it, it kind of has an arrow telling you to pull it in this direction or that direction. The next pattern that I was studying was, this is essentially for search itself. Search is, again, something that we have kind of gotten very used to. Like, we literally think of the internet as being one form of search itself, right? Like, any product that we are using, we're kind of using search. So if you're looking for a restaurant, we go to Yelp and do a search. If you're looking for some kind of product, we go to Amazon and we perform a search. If it's literally anything else, we just go to Google and search it. This is one of those most surprising ones where it's like literally none of the people that I came across knew of anything called search itself. They've never used search. A few of them had used it on their phones in the form of maybe like when they go into the contacts, they'll start typing out the name of the person that they're calling and it'll just kind of filter down for them. But they didn't know it's called search itself. So what I did in this prototype was, it's a dialer that I have, and I would ask them to call this person whose name starts with S, Sumit. The idea is, will these people try to go to search to kind of just jump to this person, or are they going to scroll? Every one of them is just going through this entire list of about 200 names, trying to go to the bottom to find Sumit. The thing that they kind of did want, when I asked them how would you do this faster, would be like, I kind of wish there was some way to do a speed dial, which is something they're used to from the feature phones. But none of them had used search. When I asked them how they use it, they have no idea about it. The other one that I tested was, for example, the various kind of buttons. And quite honestly, this is the one where we saw the most fragmented set of responses from people. So the kind of buttons that we're looking for is what works. Is it a case that text buttons work? Is it a case that icons work? Or is it a case that we need both of them? The problem that we were seeing is icons, like I mentioned earlier, just are not intuitive to a lot of these people. They have not seen most of these icons except for the most common ones, which are going to be a play, pause, and all. But the problem with text is ultimately a case, one, localization is not easy, particularly when you're building for so many different languages. What also ends up happening with localization is a lot of the words that you're kind of used to in your design, they just don't have good equivalents in these languages. For example, there's no real equivalent to download in these languages, right? And ultimately, it's a case of a literacy problem as well. A lot of these people don't actually know how to read. So they might be able to speak these languages, but they can't read over there. So we don't have a perfect answer in the end for this in terms of what works, except for the fact that you want it to be just about as obvious as possible as you can make it. You kind of want it to be in context to the experience itself. What I mean by that is, for example, the fab kind of works decently okay for these people because they expect it to be something that they can tap. So when they're on a screen, they're kind of confused about what's around there. So they kind of feel comfortable, like it's almost like a safety button that they can just tap and see what this does because of how well it's promoted. But other than that, except for the most common ones, they don't tend to work. They do try to tap around the screen, by the way, just to discover what does this do, what does that do itself. So you probably want to take that into consideration, that they might perform an action that they may not actually want to perform or go through with. So examples like delete and stuff like that, you don't want them to lose content. And finally, the last pattern that I've been studying is horizontal paging and tabs itself. Again, this is one where they struggled with more than anything else. So what I did for this prototype was, this is your most standard Android lock screen, your dialer, which has your favorites on one page, you have your history on another page, and you have your contacts on the third page, right? None of these people have ever really thought of navigation horizontally. So most feature phones tend to have it top to bottom. Anytime they have horizontal is usually when they're in the menus inside the phones, which show all these options on the on the screen itself, so they know that they have to go to the right. When it's something like this where the content is off the screen, they kind of don't expect it to be there. So what we were seeing happening over here is People are going for the fab at the bottom just because they're confused. When I ask them to call this guy called Deepak, they're like, they can't find him on the home screen amongst favorites. So they're kind of going for this fab over here. They realize it doesn't work. They go back. What does work for a few of them is when they see the tabs on the top, they kind of just tap around almost like a monkey runner running over there, which like trying to discover what it is. And that's when they discover this is working. But none of them really realize that they can swipe. They thought they still have to tap and make this work. Again, another example of where probably having text would have helped on the tabs as well, because the icons do not speak out to them. So ultimately, what can we do to serve these people a little better? And this is probably the key thing that I'll be working on in my report that will come towards the later stages of this year. We kind of need a set of things that we take back into our products and try to make them work for them. The first is obviously literally a case of increasing awareness. And as I say, the first step is solving any problem is literally admitting that there is one. So I hope I do a good enough job around wherever I'm speaking, letting them increase the awareness itself. But secondly, the thing is like we need to change our own mentalities and be more empathetic towards these people. Like it's very easy to ignore this audience because of different reasons, because they're not us, they're not the people around us. But if you are trying to tap into this market, and like I said, it's a huge market, you do want to understand them a little better and care for their needs. And of course, you need to spread this awareness that you have, these things that you learn with the rest of your team, because ultimately you alone cannot make it work within your team. So you need to convince everyone around you as well that you need to focus on this audience in a slightly different way itself. You need to make people aware, particularly your product managers and your business people, that you need to think about them a little differently. We definitely need a lot more usability studies geared towards this audience itself. These are not being done significantly enough in India itself, and it's fairly difficult because a lot of people over there do not have a research background in terms of going to the ground and doing these kind of researches. To this day, for example, we still talk about the impact of mobile being that fishermen can find out how much the fish costs in the real market. Nokia kind of talked about this 10 years ago, and to this day it remains the key selling point of mobile phones and the market itself over there. People aren't going in and trying to just discover what are the other ways we can impact this market itself, right? We definitely need a lot more companies to be doing usability studies with these people, and that means having much more diverse backgrounds as part of your studies. I know from personal experience that these usability studies are quite often biased. The people within a team would study like 5-6 different people and be like, if it backs up everything that they claim, they'd be more than happy about it. But the moment some people are coming back with a negative response to that, they'll try to find reasons why they came up with it and try to justify their decision. So you need to get over that bias that what you came up with is the right solution. And you need to make sure that you have more diverse users in your background, which includes these people itself. And ultimately, it's also very important to see how they use these other products and services that they have in their lives, right? Because again, you want to tap into these habits that they've already formed, just like you would in the real world. If you want to pick up any new habit in your real life, you want to take that habit and somehow tie it to an existing habit so you can pick on with it, right? So see how they're using other products, like for example, how they're watching movies and stuff. A great example that I have for this is there's this company in India called Fast Films, and what they do is they provide movie streaming for some regional movies in India, essentially Tamil and Telugu movies. They're doing pretty well, and one of the key features that they actually have is when a movie is being streamed, they have a couple of buttons on the left which allow viewers to either burst, like make a sound that bursts trackers, or to whistle. Like it's one of those crazy things, but that's actually something that people do a lot in South India when they go to watch movies in theaters. And they've taken a step further from there. What they've done is they see the person who's part of that movie. The people in South India are big fans of certain stars, and they're like very passionate towards the stars. And they've created a leaderboard inside their app, which is going to be like this actor, how many crackers have been burst during his scenes, how many whistles have been blown during a scene. And that's just created like this fun gamification within their application itself, because everyone is now trying to do this, trying to bring up the stars on top, and they keep changing based on the movies that are released. you want to design products with a lot more affordances, like I mentioned. This benefits everyone and not just the next billion. There are a lot of people around you who are not power users and who may not understand the basic things that you have. Again, personal experience. It's only this summer that I realized that the envelope icon inside Gmail is marked unread. I did not know that for the last 5 years. It's only when someone showed it to me that it's there. And I just never guessed it. I was just blind towards it. That's actually one of the major reasons I started changing my complete email usage behavior and moved to inbox, because I like the only way I can make this work is if I start snoozing my emails now. You also want to minimize the differences from the standard guidelines that we have for the material design guidelines and all. I don't necessarily say that you just create rip-offs of the most common designs that there are there. But what I mean by that is, for example, quite often we see products that have these kind of very hollow buttons, which is going to be like text and just a line, very thin line going around it. That's something that quite often does not come across as a button to a lot of people, not just you, but also somewhere outside. If you're walking around, for example, you may not notice the stuff around itself. So if you try to keep a little more clarity in terms of affordances, it works. You probably want to look at providing some sort of in-app tutorials and some kind of support as well. So there's this, again, from a design, there's this old saying that there's this thing that they say, a UI is like a joke. If you don't get it, it's not that good, right? But the fact is, even the best jokes out there, there's going to be a certain portion of the population that doesn't get it, right? I've had to explain George Carlin to people. I've had to explain Seinfeld to a lot of people. A lot of people back in India don't like Seinfeld, right? So whatever you do, there are going to be a portion of your users who need some of this support from you. They need some kind of explanation as to what things are. I'm not saying you go overboard, that you just have, like, when you open up the app, it's like, this is this, this is this, this is this. You probably want to make it like a little more clarity in terms of in context. Try to make them experience these things, kind of make them go through an entire experience to understand how this product works. Going back to my haptic days, what we did was, like I said, we were a personal assistant on chat. A lot of our users would open the app because they discovered it, because it came in the newspapers, it came in the news or something or the other. But they wouldn't try it out. They would just open it, they see it, and they'd be like, okay, I'm done. One of the things we changed in one of our designs was the moment they sign in, they're taken to a handle immediately, and they kind of asked to chat over there. So they'd be told, like, hey, I'm your personal assistant. What can I do for you? These are kind of the tasks that I can perform for you. It's kind of like what Slack does, where you come in and it kind of makes you chat. But simply that made a big difference, because people suddenly had this thing of responding back to this thing. And this was completely automated for us as well. Even though we have humans on the other side, we could automate this experience. So what ended up happening was a lot more people were experiencing a core feature set itself, in terms of once we're able to complete these tasks for them, they would come back. And so the thing that we would kind of push them to do the first time would be find me the best mobile plan. And then they'd be like, yep, I want to know how I can save money if you can do that for me. And we would ask them, how much do you call? How much do you text, and all of these things? And we would give them this plan. And immediately they're like, dude, I'm saving about $100 a month. And they're all into it. $100 is $2, but that's huge back in India. But yeah, once they're convinced, the trust factor develops, and then they're kind of sticking to your product because they kind of trust you all of a sudden. This is a more conceptual one, which is like, I would love it if we could have something like a platform level flag to highlight these users, the first time users, almost along the same lines as accessibility itself, right? Because this is very much an accessibility problem for these people. So when they set up the device for the first time, if you had a flag just asking them, is this the first smartphone that you're using? If they say yes or no, you could probably use that as a developer to customize your experiences for these people, right? You could make sure that you're not pushing this kind of experience that you have for these people on power users as well, who might be using it differently. Be pretty easy for you to do that. And the idea is that you also probably want to then be able to have like guidelines for these users itself, like maybe official guidelines suggesting things like from the usability studies in terms of what you want to do. So for example, one of the things that I have in mind for this is, what if when someone long presses on a button, instead of simply showing them the content description of that button, we show them a slightly bigger dialogue which kind of explains what it does. Maybe even have a video so that they can understand it if they can't quite read about it. So this kind of helps them understand your product a lot better from it. So So what's next with the rest of the study? Like I mentioned, this is ongoing, and I'm kind of hoping to complete it by the end of the year. The first is that I'm kind of interested in seeing how tutorials work for them, what kind of tutorials work. So like I mentioned, you want to do this, but I want to take some time out to actually see these tutorials being provided to these people and how it works for them. I desperately want to increase my testing with women back there. In the rural demographic of India, 98% of internet users are men. 98%. That's at the same time a very big opportunity, because that's the side of the market that, for example, BCG expects there to be a significant increase in over the next few years, particularly when they're kind of using entertainment services for watching shows and stuff like that. I'm also looking at doing case studies with companies that are building with these audiences. So the idea of that would be like, instead of just being like a kind of stuff that I come and say to people, I actually take some of these things, I go and perform these usability studies with them, but then actually try to build back design patterns into their product and see how it actually impacts, so that we have real world data showing the changes and how they are impacting the numbers. You can follow the rest of the study on this little website that I've put together. It's nextbillion.design. It just redirects to a Medium tag of mine where I'm posting some stuff. Going forward, what I'll probably have is a lot more case studies in terms of the research, the interviews that I'm doing with people and other stuff. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Raveesh Bhalla. One little fun thing that I've done this just a couple of days back is, like I said, you need to increase awareness. I've launched a Teespring campaign, which is just a t-shirt that says "My users are not on Dribble." I think from designers' perspective, they need to change this thing that we are not going to be designing for Dribble as much more as we are going to be for outside. So if you use the coupon code droidCon, you get $4 off, which is essentially shipping in the US. So yeah, that's it from me. Any questions?
I actually have a question.
Sure.
So what kind of apps do you find that are most viral in India?
So currently the one that's probably the most viral is Paytm right now. So Paytm is an app over there which provides payments in India. It's actually a very dumb user interface in terms of a lot of things. It's not polished. But the reason it's viral is more of a case of opportunity than design, I would say. Payments in India is complicated. People are not online and all. So what they've done is you can actually go and pay for things like your rickshaws. So rickshaws are like your tuk-tuks from Thailand. So people are starting to use that a lot more. They're taking it for payments on road street vendors and also. I think that's more of a case of people just using it for the need of it. The ones that are probably most viral that people don't realize in India is this app called, a couple of apps actually called Share It and Zender. What these apps allow you to do is share content from your phone to other people. And they actually share apps using that. So what it does is it'll pull out the APK from your phone and share it to other people. So that's actually the primary way a lot of people in India install applications. They completely bypass Google Play itself because they don't want to take the hit on it. Yeah, that's the one that we realized was like...
You mean they're sharing paid apps?
I'm not sure of it. I don't think anyone's paying for these apps in the first place. But yeah, so the way we got to know about it was at Happic, one of our assistants had our app on a Nokia X or whichever came out, right? The Nokia X. And we were like, we don't have it on the Nokia store because we use Play services. And when we asked him why are you doing it and like how he got it, he's like, I use Share It, and that's how I do it for everyone. I know people from Google Play came to India last year to do a bunch of research in India in terms of usage, and that's also one of the things that they discovered over there in terms of the people are sharing apps using Bluetooth more than they're actually using something else.
No, why?
Data
Why
charges.
they're not using
Data charges. Even though data is not very expensive in India, if you actually look at it, Indians are probably paying the highest portion of the salary a month compared to the rest of the world for the internet itself, right? For example, the company that I mentioned that is potentially going to change things in India in terms of mobile usage, Reliance Jio, they're just coming out. They are providing internet for like 300 MB for 150 rupees a month. That's about just a little over $2. But for rural India, people who are working with a lot of these government jobs that are like the unskilled labor jobs, they get paid $100 a day. right? So it's still more than a day's income for them to spend on this, and they're not guaranteed these stocks in the first place. So it's still going to be a while before they start spending on it. Cool. Thank you guys.